What's up, people? It's the Guardian Foul. I'm back with another video. Before I get started, make sure you hit that like and sub button. In this video, I want to talk about the worst type of prison guard, correctional officer, whatever you want to label them as, and why they're the worst type. Now, before I go any further, I want to state something, and I may be stating the obvious to a lot of people. As a correctional officer myself, I don't believe any of us ever grew up with the goal or the dream to work in prison or jails. Now, you may have a few people sprinkled here and there that actually grew up wanting to do this. But, as you get older, you're younger, you start off wanting to be maybe a police officer, firefighter, doctor, lawyer, professional athletes, all those fun things. Then as you get older, reality hits and you need a job. You mess around, you done got married or had kids or both, and you need steady income with nice benefits. So this is where most of us correctional officers, end up coming from. But again, what's the worst type of officer? The worst type of officer is not one that follows the rules and guidelines to the letter. Not one that's stern with the inmates, holding them accountable. Not even a laid-back one that just wants to allow inmates to do their time and not try to impose extra punishment because they know that their punishment is already being locked up. No. See, the worst type of correctional officers, which probably would be the best type to some inmates, is the dirty correctional officer. And what I mean by a dirty officer, I don't mean like he or she has, poor hygiene practices. No, as a dirty officer, I mean a crooked one, just like a crooked cop. Now, even though a majority of us never dreamed of working in a prison or becoming a correctional officer or jailer, we all know what we signed up for. And one of the main things that we signed up for is upholding the law, holding people to not high standards, but basic standards, especially holding yourself to those laws and those standards. And one of the main standards is to not do the same thing that some of the inmates have been convicted of doing, which caused them to be in prison. And I'm pretty sure you would think that should be something easy for a law enforcement officer to do. But to be honest, that's not the case. See, if one of your loved ones is in prison or on their way to prison, you would think that, okay, let's use a drug addict, for example. You would think that this would be a place where that drug addict can, finally get clean, get detoxed and, quit the habit, lose the vice, cold turkey. But to be honest with you, drugs are just as prevalent in the prison as they are on the outside of prison. And in all actuality, it may be even easier to get your hands on drugs in prison than it is when you were free on the street. And that's not it. Inmates are basically able to get their hands on whatever product they desire. And see, the products are able to be smuggled into prison in many different ways. First, you have through visitation. See, in visitation, there's been instances that an inmate will go as far as open mouth kissing his mother. This is real. Open mouth kissing his mother to pass the balloons from one person to the next. And see, the balloons are where the drugs are placed. And see, when that inmate swallows those balloons, eventually the balloons are going to come out through the backside and whole. Then those inmates are able to sell those drugs, if not use them. You see, because the balloons that the inmates have the drugs in, when they swallow them, they're able to make it through the digestive process and still come out whole. And they don't have to worry about the drugs hitting their system and them ODing, overdosing. Another way that the drugs or contraband are able to make it from the visitors to general population in visitation is through a child's diaper. You see, a majority of us correctional officers naturally are uncomfortable, checking, searching children. Even though we have to. It's not easy. But inmates knowing this will suggest to their family members that, you put the drugs or whatever in the child's diaper and I'll be able to get to it. But every once in a while, you'll have that one officer, which is the exact opposite of the officer that I'm going to speak on. You'll have that one officer that does his job to the fullest. And making people uncomfortable really doesn't matter to him to him or her, because the job needs to be done. Because any drug that gets into the prison puts everyone's life, in danger. There's been plenty of inmates that OD'd, on fentanyl. Officers can get hurt. There have been officers that got hurt by the inmates that's been high on these drugs. So this officer knows the repercussions of the drugs coming into the institution. So he or she is going to do their job to the fullest. We need these type of officers. It keeps everybody safe. It doesn't just keep the officer safe. It also keeps your loved ones that are inmates safe also. Because there's been many assaults on other inmates from guys that's been high. Now, another way that drugs can make it inside the institution is through drones. That's been very prevalent lately, the past couple of years. A person can be sitting somewhere 30 or 20 or 30 miles away, and I may be exaggerating, but able to fly that drone to the institution and drop those drugs or contraband off wherever it needs, whether it's the roof of a housing unit, the back of a housing unit, or on the recreation yard. People fly drones to drop the drugs off. Another way is through a family member or a friend that may hide in the woods, and when the coast is clear, they'll just toss the drugs over the fence of the rec yard. The next morning, the inmate that already been communicating with this person knows to go pick it up in a certain place. Now, obviously, this happens like during the time when everyone is locked down. There's less staff. It's normally at night or early in the morning. The final way, and it's the most prevalent way that the drugs get into the institution, is through the correctional officers. Those are the crooked officers that I'm speaking of. See, this type of officer doesn't have any integrity. Knowing that you're a law enforcement officer, you know it's illegal to bring anything in. Now, the one thing about working in the federal prisons, you have a lot of guys that's there for white-collar crimes, big-time drug dealers, or people that have access to a lot of money, whether it's through their account or a family or friend that's outside has access to their money. And what they do, and they'll be the officer that you least expect. What they do, especially when they first started working at a prison. The inmates, because they have the gift of gab, they can talk, a lot of people into doing whatever. They'll convince this officer, okay, if you bring this cell phone in, one cell phone, let's think about a straight talk cell phone, the cheapest one. One cell phone that may cost $30 or $45. If you bring this one cell phone in, you'll make $2,000 to $3,000. See, and you would think that, okay, why wouldn't a person want to do this? Because this sounds like one of the easiest ways to make a lot of money. So they're able to be convinced into putting not only their job on the line, but their freedom. Because if this officer is caught, he will end up doing time. There's rarely an instance where that officer isn't doing any time for bringing in contraband, especially hard drugs. See, one of the benefits that I have from working past 16, 17 years in corrections is me walking in that place every day, seeing that I have a certain amount of control over another grown man. He either does what I request that's within the rules, or he'll get an incident report and end up in special housing. So me knowing all of the things that I know and everything that I've seen while working in a prison, guess what? I definitely don't want to end up being there. So that's one of the main reasons why I wouldn't even think about doing something like that, because I've been tried at least 5 times throughout the 16, 17 years that I've worked in the prison. And I may sound soft for saying this, but I just have a fear of ending up in prison because of what I know. See, but the greed that a lot of us have, certain officers have, will cause them to look past that and just view the positive of it, which is making a lot of money in a short period of time with little to no effort. See, this is the type of officer, the crooked officer, I would describe as a dirtbag. See, this officer, even though they're making a lot of money, when they bring these drugs in, because this is where I would say 85 to 90% the time of like when the drugs are coming in is normally through an officer. The other ways that I listed, yeah, they get a little bit of something in, but it's not like a lot. It's coming through the officer. And see, that officer puts everyone's life in danger. Even your loved one that's locked up. Everyone's life is in danger because, like I said earlier, assaults on other inmates happen, stabbings, assault on officers happen, killing officers, and hits have been placed using the cell phones that the officer smuggles into the institution. We have had many inmates overdose within the past few years from fentanyl. I think it was 5. We've had many inmates that have had to been rushed to the outside hospital because of signs of overdosing. Officers they've mistakenly gotten high or sick for not wearing gloves and touching something that has fentanyl residue on it. Recently, there was an officer who was about to retire. He worked in the R&D, the records department of the prison, where they get the mail. He touched the mail not thinking anything about it and ended up overdosing and dying. I think this might have happened about 3 weeks ago. I believe in New York, but don't hold me to that. So, not only inmates, but officers are dying from the results of what the crooked officer does. There's been time when an officer first starts, and within that first week, an inmate compromises them. Meaning that they most likely came into the job knowing the benefit or the amount of money that they can make from bringing in drugs, and then went straight to doing it as soon as they got hired. And see, this officer eventually gets caught. He may get caught from the inmate that he's supplying these drugs and contraband to, dropping a note on them, meaning telling on them. See, once you start doing that, you don't have the luxury of saying that you're going to stop, because now the inmates have leverage on you. Okay, you want to stop? Then I'm going to go ahead and report you and watch what happens. And this almost always happens because the inmate can actually benefit from telling or snitching on the officer. So once you get started, please understand that you're stuck doing this unless you transfer somewhere else or quit. You do it once, now you got to keep doing it. And if you try to stop, your ass is grass. Because I'm going to tell on you. So do what I say or go to jail. And see, a majority of these other inmates actually enjoy having this type of officer around. Because this type of officer can make things happen for them. Help them make more money. But then you have those inmates that hate this officer because they're putting their lives on the line and maybe even preventing them from being able to make it back home to their family. So those inmates are going to want you to get fired. So if the one that you're working for doesn't tell on you, there's probably a 95% chance that one of those inmates that you're making their life uncomfortable, they're going to report you. So it's guaranteed that you're going to get reported. And the final thing I want to say is this. If you have a loved one, even if you don't like the police, even if you have a loved one that's in prison, you should hate this type of officer. Because this can be the officer that causes something to happen to your loved one. Your loved one had 5 years, and now he don't make it home because he either OD'd on drugs, or one of the inmates that was high on something that the officer brought in ended up killing your loved ones. So you shouldn't want your loved one to even be around this type of officer, because nothing good is going to come from it. Make sure you hit that like and sub button. If you found the video interesting or helpful, please share it.